Welcome to amidaedutech.com. Subscribe to Amida Edutech for more updates.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has inaugurated RoPax terminal at Hazira in Gujarat. Dr. Trivedi, what do you see the importance of this terminal, how this is going to change the local economy as well as the economy of the state?
This particular project which our Prime Minister has inaugurated is indeed a very big factor in bridging a whole lot of long routes into one short route for the traveling purposes to about 3 to 4 hours. RoPax would carry, it's like a roll on, roll off for the trucks and trains. They just roll on to the boat and then they roll off on the other side. RoPax is a specially designed vessel which can not only take the cargo trains and trucks but also can take passengers along with it. So you can imagine the cost saving and the amount of time saving that will happen both in this southern Gujarat state.
Let me bring some information about this particular service. This service will reduce the present road distance of 375 kilometers between Ghogha and Hazira to only 90 kilometers through the sea. It will now take only 3 to 4 hours to cover the distance, while earlier it used to take 10 to 12 hours. This will not only save time, but will also reduce the expenses. Also, that will help in reducing the pollution. And we are expecting that more than 80,000 passengers cars and almost 30,000 trucks will be able to take advantage of this new service in a year. And that will certainly save petrol and diesel. There is one particular thing. The name of the ministry has been changed. Now it is Ministry of Shipping, Ports and Waterways. What is the purpose of changing the name? What are the benefits the economy is going to get after the change in the name?
There's no economic benefit as such, but yes, there is a whole lot of other benefits which I think one side have been big proponent of this particular type of name change for the ministry for a long time. So it's a great thing. The immediate benefit is that to the public at large, this becomes like a very clear notation on what particular things does this ministry do. Just the Ministry of Shipping was often very confusing. I mean, yes, you couldn't relate waterways with the shipping and ports immediately, but it's like explore which part of the government does waterway lie into. Sometimes people would go to water resources, and a whole lot of letters used to go to water resources. People used to think of Water Resources Ministry as holding some kind of a brief on waterways. I think this clarity is indeed very welcome.
Dr. Trivedi, one thing is when we talk about shipping, one particular term which comes into our mind is the blue economy. And when we talk about blue economy, it is basically some of the total economic activities sourced from the marine resources. Do you think that the term blue economy has been expanded with the inclusion of waterways into the name of Ministry of Shipping?
You are very right that blue economy by itself is very contextual. So we need to be very clear on what blue economy means. I was part of a group set up by the Economic Advisory Committee to the Prime Minister's office, wherein a whole report had to be formulated on the blue economy and the resources and what to do about the blue economy. One of the first things that there was, how do you define a blue economy? If you have to bring blue economy down to numbers, then how do you take those numbers out of the entire calculation of the gross domestic product of the country? We did a lot of exercise on that, and from all these sections which constitute the GDP of this country, we went into the micro details of up to the 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 level classification of goods. And from there, culled out activities which were related to marine and ocean related. There, indeed, as you say, the questions came up of how deep into the system would you go? Would you take the entire waterways as the blue economy or what? The popular opinion was that, yes, it should be part of the blue economy because it deals with water, it deals with the economic of water. It has a contribution to the GDP in terms of transportation of cargo, in terms of transportation of people, like anything that happens on the sea or on the coastal part of the country. And we came to some kind of a very broad conclusion that about 4% of the GDP could be covered by a lot of marine activities. But I think much more work needs to be done. This was a very, very broad, I would think the number would go somewhere around 14-15% if we were to properly assess. You see, even very sharp focused numbers are also not available. You take an example of a fishing net. Fishing net, is it a manufacturing thing which will be included in of the three parts of, let's say, agriculture, the primary, secondary and the tertiary sector of the economy, part of the manufacturing sector, or from there would it be part of the blue economy, or would it not be part of the blue economy? So some of us sat down and thought how to bring this into position to be able to study. So there were things like we should study from the demand side. All the demand that is driving the GDP arising from the marine sources could be one particular way of defining the GDP which is associated with the blue economy. But I think much more work needs to be done.
Now, talking about the blue economy, or rather I use the word water-based economy, we have a coastline of 7,500 kilometers plus. Then we have waterways of 21,000 kilometers. So how these can be used to bring down the cost of logistics, especially in a country like India? If you're taking one category of goods from one state to other state, say from Madhya Pradesh to Tamil Nadu, or say from Bihar to Gujarat, that covers a whole lot of distance. So how that can be brought down, how the use of waterways as well as the coastal line will be really, really beneficial?
Certainly, along the coastline, the government has done some spatial planning in terms of devising 9 what is called the coastal economic zones. So those 9 coastal economic zones cover almost all the 9 maritime states that along the Indian peninsula. And then it also covers the islands and other such things in the territorial, other marine land borders in the economic zone of the country. The movement of goods from one coastal economic zone to another will definitely help. Now, for example, one coastal zone is covering, let's say, the port of Haldia in Kolkata. And from there, you want to take cargo via coastline to the west side in Mumbai or maybe to Goa or somewhere. That has a lot of advantages. Number one, it's cheaper. It's almost one-fifth the cost. The same is true about waterways. If I was to transport goods from Banaras to Haldia, waterways, it's almost one-fifth the cost. Number two, it releases the pressure on road and rail. So that is itself, it causes less congestion, it causes less pollution, and something which often gets unnoticed is the cost of life on road, and which happens in a large scale. That also is, the accidents are lesser, cost is lesser. So waterways are indeed a great way of transportation, and then waterways connecting to the coastal highways is another extension of the same concept, which will take you through the coastal waters. The government has done a whole lot. 2 ways of promoting development. One is to ease the regulation. That doesn't cost you much. You just make things easy. The framework of governance becomes so easy that people automatically start doing it. The cost of compliance, etc., goes down, and so people will do it. And the second thing is to develop ports, jetties, and such things, which will also help the development of waterways in coastal waters.
We have seen development of waterways. The thing is that the rivers are there for a long time, but there are certain challenges in developing waterways. What are those challenges and how those can be tackled?
Waterways indeed are a great source of transportation, pollution-free. But as you said, we have a lot of challenges. So I remember when chairman of the Inland Waterways Authority, I had approached the World Bank to fund and to design and to study, and there was a lot of business modeling that was done. The challenges remained on, to the best of my knowledge, 2 things. One was development of the infrastructure, which is reliable, which means that the least available depth of water should be at least 2.5 meters throughout the year. After the monsoons and until February, March, the water levels are there. But then they start depleting very sharply, because water is a resource being used for agriculture, drinking, and for other needs. And navigation on water is, takes a low priority. So that we cannot start navigation at the cost of irrigation water and irrigation supply. So we need to maintain more water. The World Bank project planned to develop the barrages across Ganges at intervals of some 400-500 kilometers so that water levels could be kept. The entire slope from, let us say, Prayagraj to Calcutta or Hooghly is about 21 meters, as I remember. So you need to maintain 21 meters, not throughout because it will flood the surrounding areas. So you need to maintain water at 7 meters in 3 portions of that stretch, of the huge stretch of 1,700 kilometers. Then besides the infrastructure, which is stable and amenable to navigation, we also needed mindset. People should start what Mr. Modi has just inaugurated, RoPax services on Ganges. I will give you some dimension of what happens. A truck has something like a 10 or 12 ton capacity. Now, a barge easily has 1,000 tons. So you're talking about 100 trucks on one barge. So you can imagine 100 trucks just floating through the river and reaching the point, perhaps in the same time range which you take from the road. Saved so much of pollution, saved so much of whatever accidents and congestion, and safely transported the whole thing too. So there is a huge economic gain in using the waterways. Now you have night navigation facilities in Ganges. You have all through the 1,700 kilometers on Ganges, on Brahmaputra, on other Godavari and Krishna. You have maps. But we somehow see that water levels are maintained throughout the year for a continued navigation over the waterways. So those are the challenges that I think we still need to tackle.
We are talking about blue economy, and we are also talking about strengthening the role of blue economy in overall self-reliant India. So we have Sagarmala project, we have waterways project, we have shipping project, we have various subsidy kind of incentive for the shipping industry. So what more can be done to increase this share?
Once we start doing proper accounting, we will get a better handle on what are the areas that need to be developed more for increasing the share of blue economy in the overall GDP of the country. But on the ground, I think the government has taken the right steps. Government has recently floated the concept of a separate coastal shipping bill, which is what I've been getting throughout, that the coastal shipping is a small shipping compared to the big ships which travel intercontinental. So if you're comparing a huge ship and the compliance of that, because the safety regulations, the communication regulations, the training and the manpower regulations in the big ships is totally different. You need to have a coastal authority. You need to have a coastal regulatory framework which keeps the cost of regulation and compliance on the coastal shipping in India very low. You see, that doesn't cost you money. It just costs you to keep the governance tight, make it transparent. Rather than an inspector coming up and checking up, you have to have self-declaration. Like Mr. Modi has made this earlier, every authority would ask you for an affidavit. Now nobody asks you for an affidavit. You go and you say attested, your PAN card attested. You self-attest the whole thing. So these are the things should be done more and more generally in all regulations. But as we are on the subject of coastal and there is a bill pending to be taken through the parliament, these are some of the things which we need to do. And then coordination of the state authorities' laws. If you bring an overloaded truck to the RoPax, the truck would ideally saying that he is carrying 10 tons, but he's actually carrying 12 tons. But when he goes on the RoPax, nobody can hide it. So there are issues that, people must cooperate. What should be done? This has happened in real life, I'm telling you, that some coordination between the states and the laws of the sea must get very well blended to each other. And the same holds for the inland waterways, because there are certain other regulations that apply on waterways. Can a barge which goes on Ganges also travel into coastal waterways? Under what conditions? What are the licensing requirements? Would he need a different license there, or is there a composite license which can take him through? These are issues largely settled, seeing that they're still raging, but we need to be very, very clear, and I think the government is trying its best to do it.